Today, we're going to talk about mental health. And in fact, mental health is our category of conversation for second quarter. And for a variety of reasons, but today I want to talk about how it's affecting kids. So I want you to introduce yourself first, and then I've got a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Trisha Murphy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and mental health therapist at Curis Functional Health.
Okay, so I did a little bit of research, and just to kind of set the tone for what we want to talk about, there was a government survey that suggested that the well-being of over 73 million American kids is under strain, and it's getting worse. Absolutely. And anxiety, depression, behavioral problems, all are on the rise, and that was really even before the pandemic. And so now you take into effect the pandemic, and that first year, they say that there was an increase of over 21% in behavioral problems. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about why. First of all, let's talk about why. Why?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors involved, but our community dynamics are changing. I think parents are stretched to the max. They're stressed at home. Most households nowadays are two-income working households or single parents. Oftentimes they're off to work and kids are having to fend for themselves, when parents are gone. I think the pandemic just worsened that dynamic. Parents were trying to work, but now they're working in the home and kids are trying to do school. And lack of supervision and structure in the home has, I think, also presented additional challenges in many ways. But the stress, the anxiety, the pandemic created the unknown. Parents being afraid as well, and then them not knowing. So how do you lead? How do you guide your kids if you yourself don't know? And so kids, I think, were living in a state of just inner chaos.
Let me ask you about change. So how does change affect a child?
Well, it's the unknown, and oftentimes kids can, just like us as grown-ups, feel anxiety and be uncertain of what to do. And so you may see more behavioral issues come out, like having more meltdowns, crying, withdrawing, not talking at all, doing things they hadn't done before, like in the small children, maybe frequent bedwetting, even in a child that has been potty trained for years. Something like that could come out of nowhere. And that's just basically their body responding to their environment without having the developmental skills to explain what they may be feeling.
So when you identify this and you know that your child is going through this, what are some of the things what do you do about it?
Well, I think we need to make sure our children feel safe. First of all, it goes back to safety. As human beings, we are wired for that innate desire to feel safe when we don't feel safe. And that being physical threats in our environment that can create that sense of unsafe, like we've had with the pandemic and our health. We've had physical threats, but also then the emotional threat that our inner world is vulnerable, and that something could happen in that sense. So creating that sense of safety that our kids are okay, that even though this feels scary or overwhelming, we are going to get through it. Having open conversations and being willing to let our kids have big feelings and not being afraid or shutting down ourselves, allowing our kids to have big feelings and still being there with them. Instead of saying something like, just go to your room and don't come out until you're fine or you feel happy again. That just brushes it aside, right? And then our kids come out and they are learning at that sense or in that situation, well, I can't express what I'm feeling, so I must just, avoid it, never mind. I'll go on and jump on the trampoline and it'll be fine. Well, they're still feeling that on the inside. Eventually, it's going to come out in some way. Again, maybe they get wet, or maybe they scream and cry, or like a teenager, they can do all kinds of other things. They escape and avoid into social media, or into their room on video games, or they explode. They have a big, explosion where they freak out and and they yell and they rage, even possibly.
Well, so if it's so much on the rise, and I know even within the school district, it's a major problem and it's a major concern. So it's like, if it's everywhere, and it's, how do you address a problem that is so rampant and potentially could be even a reflection of parents? So how do you address something like that?
Well, I love what you're doing. I love this. We're opening conversation because it needs to happen on multiple levels. It's a micro issue and a macro issue in our communities. Right. So on the the immediate level, our school counselors, even our teachers, helping them be stronger, more confident leaders. Helping them learn some strategies like how to set boundaries, how to empathize with our students, how to validate and normalize what they're going through.
So do you think that it's almost like when you're on the airplane, you have to put your oxygen mask on first?
Yes.
So maybe it's you address it with the adults first and then the children? Because even if you addressed it with the children, if the problem is still with the adults, we're not solving anything, right? You're not going to correct it.
You're right. Really good problem-solving strategies. Our parents and our adults and our teachers who are the role models in our kids' lives. And that's another thing, I think, going back to our grown-ups in our children's lives. What makes a good role model? What makes a good leader? If we're not regulating ourselves in our own emotions, and we're constantly living in a state of anxiety and fear, then how are we going to parent or educate or help stabilize a child that emotionally is out of control?
Well, and maybe children are a reflection of what's going on.
Unfortunately, that is the reality. Yeah. So I do private practice mental health therapy, and so I do get to see both the child and the parent. And most of what I focus on in practice is parent coaching, because that is really the source of where the most change can occur. Right. Because if our children are struggling but they don't have anyone to go to, then they're going to continue to struggle. They need guidance. They don't just innately or inherently know all the time how to cope.
I was going to say, coping skills is probably the number one. I mean, it's just dealing with life, right? Exactly. Because you're always going to be hit with something.
Yes.
Life isn't easy.
That's where I'm seeing the struggle. Our kids, so they have all the video games, they have all this immediate reward stuff. But then when they're faced with something that is hard or a challenge, they shut down. They're lacking building what we call frustration tolerance, kind of opening that distress tolerance window to when something feels hard.
And why?
It's part of the society. Instant gratification. Everywhere we look, it's instant gratification. If I'm stressed or I'm irritated or I'm hungry, we've got a solution. You can just go scroll on social media and have a mindless outlet, even for us grown-ups, right? But that doesn't sort out the problem. And when we escape and avoid, it's still there, and it's within us, and we maybe aren't noticing because we're trying to shove it aside. But if we don't process it, then it stays within us as like unprocessed emotion, and it comes out in some way. And for kids and our teens, their outlets these days tend to be social media, or the younger kids, maybe not so much, but they just know what they know in their environment with other friends or.
Yeah, I find it interesting that that they're stressed. I mean, again, it just
they've
goes
got it
back
made at this day and age comparatively.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I don't understand. It just blows my mind. What have we done as adults? We've almost set the stage for it.
We've made it too easy.
Yeah, we've made life too easy.
We have. We as human beings. My daughter and I just had this conversation. She's 11. That we need purposeful work. As human beings, we need to work towards something, because what that does for us as a human being, it makes us feel capable, and we feel useful, and it develops skills that we carry on with us throughout our lifetime, that's usable, that help us feel. When you feel good about yourself, then you are your best version of yourself, and that shines over in all facets of our lives, but if everything is easy come, easy go, then there's no direction, or you lose that inner radar of when something feels hard or challenging, that you can push through it.
Right.
That you can achieve, or that you can earn, or there's a reward in the hard work.
Right.
Instead of nowadays, what I'm seeing a lot of is just quit and walk away. This feels hard and challenging, almost a reflection of their own inner worth. I must not be good enough if I can't do it because it's taking so long to figure it out. I'm seeing, especially our teens, they just shut down and leave. I've had kids dropping out of classes because it got too challenging and they didn't feel comfortable to ask the teacher. They're just like, I can't do it, I'm just going to drop out. Well, psychologically, there's a lot of ramifications to that when we don't see something through. That sets the tone, it sets the stage for ourselves.
Well, that's what you do then. Every time something then you just drop out of it.
Exactly.
You can't drop out.
It's like you're retraining a pattern now. You can't drop out of life. So then what? When you constantly are met with a challenge and you just avoid,
or someone's there to help you avoid.
Yeah, to make it easier, like a parent. That's just making it easier. Yeah. So we have to let our kids have opportunities to fail.
Yeah.
And not just let them crash and burn, but
you gotta
encourage them and talk it through with them.
Yeah.
You know, what could you do? You know, what's another way? How would it feel if you finished? What would that feel like?
Well, even our whole, just on a bigger picture, our society is always looking for, how can we protect everybody? How can we make sure that no one has difficult times? And that's the hard lesson is that life's not fair. It never is going to be fair. And if we don't teach that to children at an early age,
it's so much harder when we're an adult.
Yeah.
Because then, as an adult, that's such a slap of reality.
Yeah.
And you're on your own at that point.
Well, it becomes a learned behavior, right?
And then it becomes more of a psychological pattern there, and damage to ourselves and self-worth and our own inner value. And then therein lies depression, anxiety, you know, things that truly get internalized that we carry with us.
Right.
Negative self-talk that just becomes normal.
And then it becomes very difficult to fix that, is what, if you start at an early age. Wow. Okay. So next time I want to talk about adults, because I think that's probably where the root of the problem is.
Yes.
Even though we're all hyper focused on children, I think in reality
we need to do some work within our leaders and our adults and our grown-ups in these kids' lives. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you know, I think one of the biggest things, I think, if I could share with you for parents, for adults to carry with them, would be look at your own coping skills and how do you self-regulate your emotions when you're under stress. If you're not regulating yourself, and then the children in your life that you may be responsible for are really struggling and having temper tantrums or behavioral issues, they're not going to get it together if you're not able to guide them.
Right.
And how do you guide if you don't know?
Exactly.
And you're struggling in yourself. So we need to do some work on ourselves and our...
Okay, so next time, that's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
All right.
We can do it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.